my name is Dawn Bronson. I grew up in the city of Blue Island, went to college, and started working at First National Bank of Blue Island after I graduated in 1981. I found my way over to Christ Memorial Church, which is where I always went to church, during my lunch hours. I was looking for someone to eat lunch with, and I knew that this quilting group, the Willing Workers, would be here every Wednesday quilting. So I took my lunch over here on Wednesdays and came and sat and had lunch with them and watched them working. Well, then I decided that I liked to sew, so I decided to make my own quilt, but not a traditional quilt, more of a cross-stitched quilt. So I sat and I would work on this quilt, which I'm showing you here, which I eventually gave to one of my daughters after she was born. After I completed this, the ladies who were quilting there said, well, would you like to learn how to hand piece and to quilt? And I told them that I would, so on my lunch hours I would quickly eat my lunch, and there were approximately 5 to 6 quilters that would be there. And they were all in their 60s, 70s, and 80 years of age. And they taught me how to quilt. And back when I was in the Willing Workers, they were very, what would be the right word? They were very cautious about who they would let quilt on their quilts. They wanted very small stitches, they didn't want to see knots, and they would talk about ladies that had come to visit and had attempted to quilt, and they would, after that lady had left, they would take their stitches out because they were dissatisfied with the size of them. They were very large, or there were knots showing in them. And when you quilt, you never have a knot show in your quilt. So they very graciously taught me how, and under their tutelage, I learned how to quilt, and was accepted into the group in 1993 with a certificate that they mailed to me, and it says Dawn, and it says, for the graduate of Christ Memorial Church Willing Workers, we are all happy to have your company. And this is signed by 6 of the ladies that were the quilters then: Pearl Ant, Florence Hilligans, Carmen Tyson, Elsa McEwen, Helen Clark, and Marge Kell. 2 of those ladies today are still alive. The other 4 have passed away. Pearl Ant was one of the ladies who was a long-time Willing Workers quilt member, and when we would have lunch, when we would take a break for lunch, we took a 15-minute lunch break, and that was it. When we quilt here now, we stretch our lunch hours an hour or so, and I don't know what the Willing Workers would think about how we spend our time, but we would have 1 pot of tea between the 7 of us, and we would put our brown paper bag lunches on our laps, and then we would eat, and we'd share a prayer, and we'd eat, and we'd talk, and we'd laugh, and then with whatever tea was left, and there was only 1 pot of tea, now we go through 3 pots of tea between 6 of us. Whatever tea was left, Pearl would take with her beautiful high heels. Pearl always wore high heels. And she would add some water to the tea that was left, and she would water the plants in the church because she felt that tea helped the plants grow. So that's a little special something that I took away from Pearl Ant. Pearl Ant was one of the ladies that after I got married in 1993 and found out I was going to expect a baby in 1995, Pearl Ant opened up her home to those 6 quilters, and they went to her house and secretly made me a baby quilt. And they presented it to me at my baby shower. And the special thing about this baby quilt that was made for my daughter Emily is that it's initialed by all of the people that were here quilting it at the time, and you can see that it's dated 1995. So it's very special to me because most of the ladies have left. Although Judy Jones, it looks like, her signature is still here, so Pastor Jones' signature is still on that, and I'm very happy about that. It's a very special gift from the ladies. The Willing Workers is an organization of the church that's been around ever since I was a little girl growing up in the 60s, and it was probably around in the 40s when it was St. Peter and Paul Evangelical Reformed Church, and then we merged with the Congregational Church. But the Willing Workers Quilters was quite an organization in its day. They used to quilt. They would charge 40 cents an hour for work that they were doing for you, and they would charge $1 to bind it and $1 to mark the quilt. If you wanted a pattern marked, sewn on it, a special design stitched on your quilt, they would charge you $1 to mark it. So it's interesting that one day I was at an estate sale in Blue Island, here in Blue Island, and it was from a former member of our church. His name was Del Taming, and I went to his home and I found a beautiful flower garden quilt there. And I bought it. I wasn't sure. I paid $85, and I wasn't sure if I spent too much, but I knew it was an old pattern, and I knew it was hand quilted, hand pieced, and it was special to me, so I bought it. And Emily, could you come and help me hold this? This is my oldest daughter, Emily. This is the quilt that I bought at the estate sale. When I took it home and I showed it to my parents, my dad, who was a member of our Christ Memorial Church, said, well, he was quite certain that if Del Taming had this quilt, that this quilt came from the St. Peter and Paul Evangelical Reformed Church, and that it was probably quilted not only by the Willing Workers, but by his aunt and by his grandmother. And so that made it even more special, and I was really glad that I spent the money on it that I did. This pattern is called Flower Garden. So, thank you, Emily. So being with the Willing Workers and now with our new quilt group it's felt like they've passed on history to me, and they've given me a sense of accomplishment and a feeling that we're keeping a tradition going of beauty in the world, because quilting was a utilitarian thing many years ago, but we quilt now a lot of times for beauty, not for necessity. So it's with pride and honor that I come during my summer vacations. I teach in a first grade school, so I come still every summer and quilt with this wonderful group of quilters, and it's a special gift to me.